Simple task. It's basically to thank you for coming to attend this particular session. But some of you might be asking, why are we here? What is it that we are seeking to achieve as global shapers? And I just want to run through a bit of an experience that I went through so that we can give purpose and context. When I was still as young as some of you, I think way back in 1980 something, I was picked out to be a young global leader for tomorrow by the World Economic Forum. That experience and recognition was unheard of at the time for a Zimbabwean. I was the first Zimbabwean to be so appointed. That gave me an opportunity to go to Davos in Switzerland. And it opened my eyes that was very, very rich. It opened my eyes to a world of contacts that I never ever imagined that I would come across. And I'll give two illustrations. I never imagined I would sit across the table from Bill Gates. Bill and Melinda Gates sat across from me. And I remember that experience so vividly because there were 100 of us coming from all over the world. And quite frankly, we didn't know how to behave in the presence of such greatness. And I noticed, because we were in Davos for about a week, movers and shakers. And in there, people that normally had cereals for breakfast, that morning, because Bill and Melinda had fruit for breakfast, every young person literally had fruit for breakfast. Fruit ran out that day. And in my eyes, I interpreted it to mean that our lack of exposure, particularly us Africans who were in the room, and they were neither did we know quite how to interact with these people. In my mind, immediately, this is way back, 1986 I think it was, I made a commitment that I was going to form a form of World Economic Forum within Zimbabwe. And I was going to make sure that I would sponsor and empower and network to the point that we would be able to send a whole lot more Zimbabweans to these global forums so that they would have the networks, they would have the exposure, and they would be able to take on ideas. I discovered that it was a rare thing for you to be actually elected to become a young global leader or a global leader for tomorrow, as it was then known. And I then urged over the years, and I was fortunate, I think for over 26 years, I observed. No, it wasn't 26, it was actually 14 because I was about 26 then. I observed over the 14 years till I was 40 how the World Economic Forum worked, and I sought to change it. And one of those agenda items for me was to make sure they create rich and famous and the influencers of the world. And I would argue that today is accumulation of some of that thought process, because the global shapers over the past 3 years have created a town hall meeting. They've even gone better than the ideas that we had of saying, how do we get our own youth and young people exposed to the World Economic Forum? And so today I want to thank the organizing team that was behind this particular town hall meeting. If the shapers can stand up and we applaud them. Are you alone? Who else? The organizing committee, please, Enrique. Thank you for your sterling work. Thank you for going and being courageous to take these ideas, shape them into your own, and go a step further than we imagined. Because initially, 3 years ago, you might remember, and I know there was a criticism that was launched and aimed at the organizers. We don't fret at the global shapers. We take it in kind. I know it was made in venom, but we consider those ideas as being progressive ideas so that we can shape our own future and make it a whole lot better. So we've moved on from hosting the president and making him know that we exist and facilitating for him to be at Davos and giving him a baptism of fire. And what happened last year when the global shapers of Harare hosted the Minister of Finance, they did a pretty good job. They influenced him. They talked to him. In as much as you might not make much of what we are doing, I believe we were at the very heart and soul of his thinking in the budget about what was he going to do. I remember the youngsters, and I call myself a backroom boy because I'm no longer young. But I interact so much with Mthuli that I said to him, Mthuli, you're a colleague. I can level a quota of 25% to the youth. We want those tenders. We want to create new entrepreneurs, but we have no money. And lo and behold, from that particular meeting, January last year, several meetings and interactions. Last year in November, he announced that $1 billion would be allocated to young people. It's never been done. And so I applaud the global shapers. You're not doing nothing. Don't fret. My hope, and the president was made aware, and whether people like it or not, 10 members of parliament will be young people. I believe it came from that in terms of part of the participation. So what is it that we are doing? We are influencing and shaping our society. We can only go as far as we have been exposed and what we have experienced. What the Global Shapers and World Economic Forum does is it allows young people to be exposed by travel. And I was listening just this afternoon, no less than, I think, 6 people have had exposure they would have never had globally. And so on an annual basis, we have up to 30 people participating as members of the Global Shapers community in Harare. We've also formed, at least represented by 2 people. We also have 2 people from Baitbridge. I hope they're still here. Honesty is still here. What we want to do is to make sure that within all the provinces, at least, we've got a Global Shapers Hub. I look even further and I say within the 93 urban and local authorities and rural authorities, there is no reason why the suburbs and townships of Harare, there is no reason why we cannot have a hub. And I believe it is by having these hubs that we are able to exchange ideas, we're able to influence policy, we're able to shape our own destinies. So I believe that we have only just begun. Already we extracted out of the ministers, the 2 ministers that were here, Ministry of Youth and also the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. I know I can speak quite confidently on behalf of the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. I happen to be one of the 10 advisors. Youth. Are we together? I will be batting for the youth. And I think she probably did a disservice to the ministry. The ministry is on an agenda as the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. And I know I can speak about this. There is a project which I am chairing for rural and agricultural development. If we can use our agricultural crop to process and use our skills to become traders in terms of global and engaging in terms of global trade, we would have gone a long way. That is something we can extract out of Zimtrade. And we know Zimtrade falls under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. So I believe that, in closing, the team have done splendidly well. There's a lot of work, but it can accommodate our ideas. I believe we can impact and influence and shape the future. I believe that out of the shapers will come members of parliament. Out of the shapers will come board directors. Out of the shapers will probably come future ministers and future presidents. And if you are frustrated as a young person, just channel it within the global shapers, because we are at the table, we are influencing, and we do.